Part 13. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 121. Sugu looked at the blonde girl's back. At this time, I was thinking, how did Leipzig get it in the game? As a byproduct of the construction of Dadian still does not have it, but Leipzig, which has been stuck in the past, has got it. My only impression of Leipzig is that I threw it into the expedition team after it was built, and then never took care of it again. As long as the expedition lasts long enough, there is a chance of increasing the favorability. So in the end, how much favorability Leipzig has, I don't have a data panel, so I don't know. The only impression I have about Li Hui is probably the short blonde hair. Li Hui is pretty good, but his strength is too poor. Originally, apart from Helena, no one among the light cruisers could fight. Leipzig's dialogue in the original game was about the ship girl talking about salary, fighting for salary, etc. Even the lines of the oath were considering salary and benefits. The experience of each of my ship girls is basically the same as in my game, such as wedding ships, equipment, and many, many more things. Leipzig is already like this, and when I have time, I wonder if I would be considered a pervert if I really met Helena and poked the screen countless times in the game and even tried to reveal my underwear. Think about the cute little girl submersible mackerel again. Well, let's not think about it again. Judging from the opponent's lines and experience at this time, Leipzig is probably quite miserable. But no matter what, the salary Leipzig wants now is not available. On the contrary, at this time, Sugu and Saratoga were sitting in a small shed that was set up behind the other party's booth to store the cargo boxes. They each moved a small mat and sat there. At this time, Leipzig was sitting behind the booth selling books. Saratoga picked up the latest book and looked at it, commenting on it while reading. Bismarck actually wore a bunny girl costume. It's a shame she dared to draw it. Beautiful dealer Bismarck, but her hair is actually brown, isn't that right? Crazy Macau Casino and beautiful dealer? However, Bismarck's hair before the transformation was indeed brown, and after the transformation, it was silver-white short hair. Of course, my Bismarck is a 100-level wedding ship after the transformation. Thinking of this, Sugu said, Bismarck's original hair was brown. Well, show it to me. What should I say about Sugu? In his previous job, he could talk to anyone, whether he was a serious old engineer or a frivolous young colleague. He is serious when he is serious, and not serious when he is not. It all depends on who is talking to him. So now Saratoga is sitting next to him reading a book. Don't even think about getting serious now. Sugu reached out to grab the book in Saratoga's hand, but Saratoga held it tightly and said, if you want to take a look, just go and get it. There are so many around. Only then did he realize that there was a lot of inventory behind the booth. Sugu took a book at random and opened the cover. It seemed that the painting was pretty good. Of course at this time, although the book looked unsightly to most people, Sugu could still remain expressionless on the surface even if the content was exciting. Saratoga could usually keep an expressionless face, but she couldn't do it around Sugu. She didn't have any preference for books, and she would just read them if they were available, or maybe it was more because she wanted to be with her brother-in-law. Only watch if you get closer. At this time, she said with a smile, Bismarck and Prince Eugen are violating Hood. It's a shame they can draw it. Ha ha ha. How many pages? 15 pages. Suddenly Sugu was in a panic, flipping through the book. The scene of Bismarck and Prince Eugen violating Hood was unexpectedly interesting. After reading this, Sugu decided to return the favor and said to Saratoga, open page 27. At this time, Sugu and Saratoga were communicating, and Leipzig was sitting on a chair behind the booth. As the morning passed, even the small comic exhibition gradually entered the hottest event. Compared with the original lack of attention, people would come occasionally. At this time, She immediately showed a sweet smile. Although there were many people at this time, but thinking about it with a malicious attitude, it might be because Leipzig wiped off the makeup on his face, revealing the cheeks of the little beauty. Welcome. Yeah, our books are beautifully made, reasonably priced, and signed. You ask me if I am a pirate cat teacher? I guess half of it. What are you talking about? Why did I get married at such a young age? I'm not married. Where did you hear the rumors about a husband and wife team? You ask me for my contact information? No, no. Give me money. No matter how much money I give, I won't give it to you even if she is a money lover. Some things are more precious to her than anyone else. Sitting in the back, Sugu looked at the back of Leipzig. Even though there was a booth here, there were many customers, but the sales volume of the book was actually not very good. However, although the book did not sell very well, Leipzig's laughter can be heard every time a copy is sold. Consultant Su asked, "How much did you sell today?" Leipzig's smiling face suddenly disappeared, and he turned around and said angrily, "It's still far from enough. I haven't even sold my month's salary. If I can't sell these today, I will have to drink the northwest wind." Sugu looked at the books packed around him and thought that they would definitely not be sold out today. He didn't know the story about Leipzig and Tirpitz. After thinking about it, Sugu said, "It's not that exaggerated. If it can't be sold, it won't be sold. Your salary has nothing to do with this place." Hearing Sugu's words, Leipzig immediately complained and said, "No way, Bizai doesn't pay me a salary. She said that the number of books sold will be my salary. This book is inherently niche, and it is neither praised nor praised. It was a hit. Even if we sold out everything here, it wouldn't be worth my salary. It was really a scam. It was like where I used to work. They actually used a calendar as a salary to give me a salary. I opened the door of the boss's office on the spot. I'll resign if I'm defeated. Using a notebook as salary is a bit too much for Bazai, but using a calendar as salary is even more excessive. But how can this happen to you, girl?" Leipzig got off the chair and turned around. She has a slender waist and is not very tall, just like a high school student. After thinking about it, she sat on the tabletop of the booth and held the edge of the tabletop with both hands. At this time, when I heard my admiral denounce Tirpitz, I suddenly felt a sense of shared hatred, but then I thought about my life in the garrison. Everything was caused by the man in front of me. You have the nerve to ask Bizai, my salary, where is my salary? Leipzig's voice was full of grief and anger. Sugu immediately surrendered, and he still paid his salary. I am waiting for my salary. So he quickly wanted to change the subject. Even if I pay you a salary, what do you want to buy? What are you selling? If you don't want to buy it, I will convert the money into gold and save it. What are you saving it for? Saving is saving. Since it's all saved, let's keep it with me as salary. I'll keep it for you. I'll give it to you if you want to buy something in the future. This is probably how the black-hearted boss was made. However, Sugu did not have any money, so let's keep it for you first. Keep this account in mind and distribute it later when you have money. However, Leipzig could not feel a single bit of Sugu's kindness. She raised her eyebrows and said immediately, "Stop talking, or I'll beat you up." This is what her last boss who gave her a calendar said. The other party is probably still lying in the hospital. Who is the murderer? What about people who don't know? Sugu had a grudge, and the black-hearted boss certainly deserved to be beaten, even though he was a black-hearted boss. Putting aside the issue of salary, Consultant Su said, "Where is the North House? Well, why didn't Tirpitz come?" Leipzig said angrily, "Of course she didn't come, otherwise why is she called Bazai? Because she is a homebody. She can stay at home without going out for a month. If you want her to go out, why not kill her? I want her every day helping her bring lunch boxes, I feel like I have become a nanny now, but I don't have the salary of a nanny. Sugu recalled the rumors he heard from Chen Nan, and then asked, where is Bismarck? Is he with you guys? What? Do you miss your eldest wife? As soon as Leipzig finished speaking, Saratoga, who had been silent for a long time, said, the eldest wife is my sister. Secretary of his sister's rights and interests, insisting on unwavering for 100 years, this is Saratoga ad. Stealing one's own sex is an internal conflict among people, and anything else is a class conflict. Leipzig is not one who likes to argue about this. She said, okay, your sister is the eldest wife. Then Leipzig added, it's so rare for Bismarck to come back, and then give Bizai money, a lot of money. Otherwise, just draw books to make money. Bizai will starve to death long ago, that waste house, Leipzig said at that time. She seemed to have a deep resentment towards Tirpitz. This was also a class conflict between the hard-working employees and the black-hearted boss. However, she had no way to resist because Bismarck had a great god pressing down on her head. Is Bismarck here? No, I've been out for a long time. Consultant Su asked, are you living with her now? Yes, I worked as her assistant and as her nanny. I was really possessed by an evil spirit before agreeing to her request. If I had known that I would wander around alone, wouldn't it be cool? She thought of her previous journey. Although she was a little lonely alone, she was more free-spirited. She said, chivalrous and handsome. As Leipzig said this, someone came over to the booth to buy books. She quickly turned her head and put on a smiling face and said, welcome. At this time, people kept coming over, and Leipzig was getting busier and busier with work, so there was no way to chat. Saratoga had finished reading the book. She closed the book. She stood up and pulled Sugu up and said, it's so boring. Let's go watch cosplay. That's fine, Sugu readily agreed to the suggestion. As they said this, Leipzig, who was selling, signing and cashiering, almost cried in anger. He was already so busy, and if you didn't come to help, it would be fine. They also discussed going out to play. As expected, it is a black-hearted admiral and a black-hearted boss, paired with a heartless sister-in-law. No, it should be said that it is two heartless sisters-in-law. This is no one else, an absolutely black-hearted combination. Leipzig's character is not the slightly cowardly and gentle type of Fletcher. She slapped the table and got up. My Lord Su, you come here to help me with the cashier. Alas, there is no place. If there is no place, you can just move the small mat and sit next to the cashier. Otherwise, you don't want to see your wife. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 122. I didn't feel much when I saw this book at first, but then I heard someone said that Bismarck is always the protagonist in the author's books. At that time, I began to wonder whether it might have been painted by Bazai, who has such a big obsession with Bismarck. It's just Bazai. Now I'm looking for my former ship girl everywhere, so it's not wrong to come over and have a look regardless of whether it's her or not. You guessed it right, the one who is obsessed with Bismarck is Bazai. He persisted until the morning before he was beaten up and started painting again in the afternoon. Speaking of which, you are also in Chuangziu. Why have you never met me? Leipzig was packing up her books, and she said angrily, Sichuanjiu is so big. Okay, and Bazai basically never goes out. Even if I go out to buy things, I go back quickly. I don't like to go shopping outside. It's just a coincidence, so it's not surprising that we didn't meet each other. It must be said that although Chuangziu is a newly established island city, it is a very important port in the entire world. Because of the existence of the Naval Academy that trains admirals and ship girls, the nearby sea area can basically guarantee safety. In the sea where deep-sea ship girls are raging, safety is of course the most important thing. This is not a political center, but it is a very important economic city. Because of the port and transfer station, many people invested here, and soon it became a big city. The city is very big, and it is very difficult for two people to meet each other in a city with a population of tens of thousands. Leipzig added, "You are the ones, why did you come to the city?" "In order to pass the examination to become an admiral." "Huh? Our strong garrison still needs to come here to take exams with those newcomers." Leipzig had traveled all over the world before meeting Tirpitz, and had seen many various garrison houses. Those garrison houses compared with the tutelary mansion in his memory, the difference is only that of Yinghuo and Haoyu. Our tutelage is destroyed. Now I will re-examine the establishment. I will be allocated with the establishment package so I don't have to build the tutelary by myself with this. Sugu introduced the things about the tutelary. Leipzig was a little confused and said, "Didn't it say that the Prince of Wales has a garrison? Just look for her. I know now that she has a garrison, but I didn't know it originally." "Sigh, do you know the Prince of Wales? Where is she now?" Leipzig replied decisively, "I don't know, I just met the London." "Where is the London?" Sugu heard Firefly talk about the heavy cruiser London. "I just met her. She is also traveling. In order to become an outstanding lady, she is training in cooking. I don't know where she is now." "She practices cooking?" Cuisine for Murder, the original dress-up in the game, the London's dress-up, was called British cuisine. As a British delicacy, the salted fish inserted into the potato pie is a famous dish called Looking Up at the Stars. Of course, if the London ship were to do it, I would probably replace the salted fish with lamprey eels. Leipzig waved his hand and said, "Fortunately, she can now make dishes like chocolate fried eggplant. It's not too bad." "Isn't chocolate fried eggplant bad enough?" Leipzig then said, "Admiral, you have become an official admiral now. Do you have a salary?" "You have to return my salary to me." "Well, I don't have a salary yet. Besides, first of all, how much salary do you want?" Leipzig was suddenly confused. What salary should he receive? She spread her fingers and said, 500 gold coins, or you can exchange them for the best quality silver. Leipzig never hesitated to pay the high price. Sugu almost squirted out while drinking water. 500 gold coins? It would be great if I can get one for you now. Poor guy, you don't have as much money as I do. Saying this, Leipzig glanced at the sky. The nearly winter sun was not dazzling. She took off her hat and said, "It's already noon." Sugu said, "I think so. Do you have a watch?" "No, but I can smell the aroma of the food." Sugu understood what Leipzig was thinking when he heard this. It was good that the other party didn't ask him for salary now. He said, "Then I'll buy fast food." "Leipzig, what do you want to eat?" "Meat, everything needs meat, any kind of meat is fine, but only meat." "What about Saratoga?" "I'll go with my brother-in-law," Saratoga said, holding Sugu's arm. Soon it was getting close to the afternoon, and the exhibition was almost over, so I just ate a packed lunch during the period. Of course, Sugu paid for the lunch himself. Leipzig had no interest in paying for it and didn't say any kind words. With fewer and fewer people attending the exhibition, even Leipzig, which was looking forward to selling out all its books, had to prepare to close its stall. The books were stacked up one after another, then wrapped in brown paper and tied with rope. The small horse tie was also folded and placed next to the booth. Then Sugu looked around and saw that all the books had been put away, but the shredded paper, paper boxes and lunch boxes on the ground were not cleaned up, and bones and peppers were also thrown around randomly. Consultant Su asked, "Don't you need to clean up these things?" "No matter what, just let the people who provided the booths clean them themselves. When I came over in the morning, the booths were not set up, and their staff ignored me. I set up these booths myself, and I also did the advertising." It was hung up. I begged for a long time before lending it to me, and my clothes were all damaged by the hooks. Leipzig said this, raised his hand, pulled down the promotional poster attached to the booth, threw it to the ground, and stepped on it twice. She pulled at the corner of her clothes a little sadly. What to do with these things? Sugu looked at the wrapped books around him. Just give the rest of the books to the publisher. Anyway, I can't make enough money to live on now. And I won't come here anymore. Why don't you come? The purpose of drawing books is to make money, and you are here. Leipzig looked at the admiral, who did not realize it, clasped his fingers, and said matter-of-factly, now you have to provide food, drink, and shelter, and I won't work. You still have to make paychecks. Soon after, Leipzig finished handling the matters at the comic exhibition, and she led the two of them out of the comic exhibition and across a street. There are restaurants and shops along this street, and there are also vendors pushing three-way carts to buy various small handicrafts and specialty fruits. Leipzig bought a packed lunch on the roadside, then walked all the way to the end of the street and passed through a narrow alley. Sugu said, "Why do you think of living here?" The alley seemed too winding, and it was troublesome to walk back. Just walk faster from here, otherwise you have to make a big detour. It's closer to the back door through this alley. Walking through alleys and corridors, I opened an iron gate and walked into a yard with tall trees planted in it. The geographical location here is in the north of Chuangzhou City, and the place where I live is in the south of Chuangzhou City. There is a long distance between the two sides. Even if there is a tram, who will run around if there is nothing to do? It is really normal to not encounter it. Leipzig pointed to a building in the courtyard and said, "We live there." Sugu looked around. The greening here was very good. The walls of the yard are covered with unknown vines, and a beautiful maple tree is planted in the middle of the yard. At this time, the maple leaves are already red, and occasionally 2 pieces will fall. It has not rained in the past 2 days, and the maple leaves are full. On the contrary, the place looks very beautiful. They walked across an entire courtyard, walking Leipzig, and then heard a dog barking. That resident has a dog that is very annoying. It barks every time he comes back, even at night. He really wants to poison him to death. Poisonous dogs are bad, aren't they? Leipzig complained, it barks every day, during the day and at night, and he doesn't listen when I communicate with him. I heard that a child was bitten before, and the person refused to pay. I was almost bitten once. Would you get rabies if you were bitten by a dog? Rabies? What is that? We ship girls won't get sick easily anyway. Sugu thought for a while, if the dog is poisonous, then feed the dog chocolate, dark chocolate with high cocoa content. Why are you feeding me chocolate? As I said, poisonous dogs will not harm ordinary people. How can chocolate poison a dog? Don't lie to me. Because cinnamon and theobromine are not easily absorbed by dogs, they have no effect on humans. You are so vicious that you want to poison a cute dog. Oh, you were the first to say you wanted to poison someone else's dog. Then walked along the corridor to the second floor. There were some potted plants, small iron trees and asparagus trees planted along the corridor on the second floor. Then I walked to a house in Leipzig and stopped to take out the key. There was a security door made of welded steel bars and a wooden door painted green. The door inside was okay, but the door outside was bolted and hung for some reason. Big lock. Advisor Su said, "Turpits must be inside. Why did you lock the 2 outer doors?" Leipzig didn't take it seriously and didn't seem to think she had done anything wrong. She put the lunch box she was carrying on the railing of the corridor and said, "She won't come out anyway. To prevent theft, I just put a hanger and locked it outside." That's it. Yes, Bizai is probably sleeping now. Sugu couldn't help but complain, since there were people inside, why should we worry about theft prevention? Then Leipzig opened the door, and a decadent atmosphere hit his face. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 123. As soon as I entered the door, I first saw a mess of posters covering the walls. Most of them were Bismarck posters, including cartoons, realism, and sketches. Walking into the entrance hall, there are shoe racks and cabinets placed next to the wall. In addition, there are some bottles and cans, and there are a few bags of garbage placed in the entrance hall that have not been thrown out. A Bismarck doll, several sizes larger than little Tirpitz' cat sister, was placed haphazardly on the cabinet next to it, along with a pot of withered narcissus. Looking around, the room is paved with solid wood floors, messy things are placed randomly in the living room, and thick cloth curtains block the light that shines into the entire living room. In short, it feels like a very warm room. Got messed up once by a naughty kid. At this time, there was a figure sleeping on the sofa with a pillow in his arms. Is that Tirpitz? Sugu thought this as he stood at the door and planned to slip off his shoes. After all, it was a wooden floor and it would be bad to walk in with dirty shoes. But at this time Leipzig had already walked in, his cloth shoes stepping on the solid wood floor. Hey, Admiral, no need for slippers. Sugu didn't care about it. To be honest, slippers did seem troublesome. Leipzig added, anyway, there are no slippers for you to wear here, and it will definitely stink if you take off your shoes. Sugu wanted to say that compared to before, Lexington's socks were washed every day now, but he gave up after thinking about it. There was no reason to expose himself to scandal. At this time, Sugu had already walked into the room and looked up and down. It was obviously much better than where he lived. At first, when I walked along the alley, I thought the other party lived in some kind of bad place. But now I saw that he was completely indifferent. The buildings and rooms don't look very good from the outside, but the interior decoration is very luxurious, although these are based on today's civilization. Leipzig put the lunchbox he brought back on the coffee table, and then said, "Here, that's your wife Tirpitz, sleeping like a pig." To be honest, Sugu still feels a little embarrassed when someone directly calls her my wife, your wife. Although I liked the game very much at first, I still felt uncomfortable when it actually appeared. This may seem like Yegong is a dragon. Except for Tirpitz, who was a little girl, she felt fine when they first met. Later, when she met Lexington, even though the other party was attentive to her, it was difficult to respond to her feelings immediately. At this time, he looked at Tirpitz's face. Compared with the thin faces like Saratoga or Leipzig, Tirpitz's face was rounder. Rather than using adjectives like beautiful, he felt that he would use cute to describe it. Obviously better. At this time, Tirpitz was sleeping without any image at all, with his long pink hair scattered. Her cheeks were bulging, she was breathing shallowly, and she frowned and pursed her lips in her sleep. She was indeed a very cute girl. She hugged a pillow that was as tall as herself, hugged the pillow tightly with her hands and pressed it against the side of her face, and her legs held the pillow in an imageless manner, exposing a pair of long, fair, and slender legs. Although she is very unimpressive, the girl is cute, so nothing is a problem. On the other side, Leipzig was standing next to the coffee table, pouring water for two people, and said, "Do you want to wake her up?" "Forget it, let's wait until she wakes up." To a certain extent, Sugu is still very considerate. It would be better to say that the spirit of not causing trouble to others is rooted in his mind, just like when he was at work, he didn't bother him unless it was important. Rest for others. Sugu took the water glass from Leipzig's hand and looked around. Compared to Saratoga's politeness, he was obviously more casual. At this time, she walked to the sofa and squatted down, looking at Tirpitz's sleeping posture, and said with a smile, he is sleeping on the sofa with his arms around the pillow. Then she poked Tirpit's face and arm with her finger. Compared to her slender figure, she felt the elasticity of Tirpit's arm clearly. She said, "Tirpit's Bitsy is quite fat." Sugu looked at it and thought that such a figure was considered fat. He was a little confused and said, "It's not fat at all. It can only be said to be plump. Plumpness doesn't even count. Maybe it would be better to describe it in another way, more meaty." "Really? That brother-in-law likes a fleshier figure. I like them all." After saying this, Sugu was not prepared to discuss this issue with Saratoga, because the other party's unscrupulous character was probably always ready to trap him and wait for him to jump into it. He picked up the drawing board on the coffee table and looked at it. On the drawing board, the woman only had a draft. Leipzig also poured herself a glass of water, and she asked, "It seems serious, will you do the same?" "I am best at sketching, such as drawing eggs, apples and bottles. That's all. I can draw people a little bit, but I'm not good at it. And I'm good at cartoons. For example, elephants, dinosaurs, and monsters. Where's the painting? I can barely draw women." "Too bad, only women are drawn." "Nonsense. As a man, of course I would give priority to learning to draw women." Sugu retorted, "You can only know how to draw women. You don't have a male protagonist in your book." "Where is it?" With that said, Leipzig picked up a book from under the coffee table and handed it to Sugu. Sugu flipped through the pages and then said in surprise, "There is actually a male protagonist. There seems to be a male protagonist in this book, but I just wonder why the heroine trains the male protagonist." He closed the book and said, "I heard that you don't draw men. It's just that if you don't publish it, who's to say you won't draw it?" Now, Sugu and Leipzig are actually familiar with each other. Thinking about the plot just bundled in the book, he smiled and said, "You guys have really strong tastes." "Really? But the male protagonist was painted by you, Bizai." "It was the only one Bismarck painted for her, but she lost interest after half the painting. The hero is actually himself, but he doesn't look like him at all. But the hero is himself, so thinking about this, he decisively opened the book again." Leipzig looked at Sugu, who was watching with relish, and said, "You actually read your own book with great interest." Sugu said, "I am a very casual person." Of course he has to read it, he still has his promise to fulfill. After Suguki finished speaking, Saratoga suddenly said. Sugu almost choked while drinking water and coughed. He remembered what he had said, whoever drew his own book would be killed. Then Saratoga looked at Sugu's expression. It seemed that the other party had thought of it, so she said again. Sugu didn't answer anything and just read the book. Tirpitz had not yet woken up from his sleep, so Leipzig took out a box from the cabinet in the living room, put the box on the coffee table and opened it. All the messy dried fruits were put in the paper box. "She stored food for the winter at home," Leipzig said. "Really?" Sugu grabbed a handful of melon seeds and cracked them. Then he saw a cute lucky cat lying next to him, so he wanted to reach out and touch it. Before he could stretch out his hand, someone took the first step. Leipzig he had already picked up the lucky cat and held it in his arms as if to protect it. "Don't touch it," Leipzig said quickly, "this is my piggy bank." "Why is the piggy bank here?" "I'm not afraid of people taking it away. Throw a coin in every day when you come in, so I just put it here." "What do you want to buy when you save up?" "I told you a long time ago, I don't know, just save it anyway, you don't want to take it away anyway." "I wouldn't do such a thing. I just remembered that I had wanted to do such a thing before, but I only saved up for a week before I took out the money to buy a cassette. A 4-in-1 game console cassette was purchased in his elementary school. It was quite popular at the time. In addition to exchanging cassettes with each other, I would occasionally buy them myself. I still remember removing the casing from the cassette as soon as I bought it, and then all the cassettes turned into computer memory sticks. What is a cassette? Nothing. While they were talking like this, Tirpitz suddenly stirred on the sofa, and then she made an incomprehensible sound and got up in a daze, rubbing her eyes and looking around. The side of her face was flushed, and to a certain extent she was similar to little Tirpitz, except that one was an adult version and the other was a child version. Then she saw Sugu, but at this time she was not surprised at all and said, "Well, Admiral, why are you here? It's good to see you again." Again. At this time, not only Sugu was confused, but Leipzig was also confused. "When have you been here? When did the Admiral come? Everyone looks like a black question mark. Looking for the lost ship girl." Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 124. Tirpitz, who looked sleepy in the living room and was wearing beige pajamas, got up in a daze and seemed to have no feeling for his long-missing admiral. At this time, the cuffs of her pajamas had fallen down to her arms, and her thighs were folded together. She was looking around and rubbing her eyes. The winter season was already getting chilly, so she was still wearing a thick, wrinkled coat. Of course, the reason why she wore the coat was because she hadn't gone out all day, and she didn't even bother to change out of her pajamas. Fortunately, she just walked around the room with the coat on. She hugged the pillow with a confused expression on her face, then picked up the cup Sugu placed on the table and took a sip of water. Then she held the water cup with both hands and sat on the sofa with her legs bent. "Hey, Admiral, where is my sister?" Tirpitz looked around and then said. "Your sister?" "Bismarck," Sugu repeated doubtfully. At this time, he had no idea why Tirpitz asked about Bismarck. "Sister said she would definitely find you. Didn't she bring you back?" "What about her?" "It was Xiao Zai who found me." "Xiao Zai, I asked her to go with us before, but she refused and wanted to go alone. I didn't expect that she would have the best luck. The ship girls who met him usually would be surprised when they met him. Tirpitz seemed to be particularly different." Sugu was a little confused but didn't pay much attention. Then Tirpitz said, "Admiral, didn't you leave?" "Yeah, but now it's back." "Then what's the reason? Why did you leave? Everyone in Minato misses you so much." There was no way to answer this question. Sugu thought for a while and said, "I left for some special reasons, but now I'm back." Tirpitz raised his head and drank the water, and said, "It doesn't matter if you look at us occasionally, isn't it always like that before?" Sugu immediately thought that apart from activities, he only went on expeditions every day. This was probably what Tirpitz said about taking a look once in a while. But later on, in order not to be distracted while studying for the exam, I gritted my teeth and quit playing the game, and even uninstalled the game. This was probably the real disappearance. It suddenly appeared again, so troublesome. Sugu didn't know how to answer after hearing Tirpitz's words. Was he disliked? Then Tirpitz put down the cup in his hand and huddled up on the sofa, like a wounded little animal. Then she suddenly said with sadness, "The little house is gone, and my sister and Prince Eugen are gone too. I'm left alone. Not without Leipzig by your side." Sugu wanted to ask this question, but seeing Tirpitz's weak look at this moment, he suddenly fell silent. He didn't quite understand the situation. Although Bismarck was gone, he was just wandering around the world looking for himself. He heard these things from Leipzig, so this was not considered abandonment. After hearing Tirpitz's words, Leipzig also said, "Don't listen to her nonsense. Bismarck will come back often and give her money. Otherwise, if you look at her now, she can afford to live in such a house. I can afford to sell so many things." Sugu had already seen the decoration here. It was obviously much better than his own place. There were all kinds of dolls and figures around, which were the most expensive ones. Tirpitz did not refute, as if Leipzig did not exist, and rubbed his eyes again and fell asleep. At this time, she hugged the pillow in her hand tighter and said, "I told my sister a long time ago that if the admiral comes back, he will come to us, and she must become a mercenary." After saying this, Tirpitz looked at advisor Sue and said, "Admiral, are you leaving again?" "Will not." "Then you will take care of me from now on." "Although I still don't have much money, I won't be able to give the same answer to Fletcher. My own ship girl has very low requirements for me, and most of the time she just needs a piece of my mind. Although there is no way to give away luxury houses and delicious food, at least the kindness is still there." Yes, after Sugu just finished speaking, he saw Leipzig waving with his 5 fingers open next to him, which meant that you still owed me the salary you didn't pay. That's it. Tirpitz was sitting on the sofa and slowly crawled towards Sugu. She sat down again halfway and said, "The admiral has not disappeared even after talking a lot. Why do you want to disappear?" Sugu became even more confused, and then he roughly understood why Tirpitz said he saw him again. "This dream is so real. It's a pity that my sister is not around. Usually, my sister, the admiral, Leipzig and Prince Eugen should be together. Well, Xiaozai should be there too. My sister didn't knock me on the head, but Leipzig actually she didn't even ask me about the salary I owed her. I still like to pinch Xiaozai's cheek. It's so cute. Even if she doesn't admit it, she will become me in the future, haha. Prince Eugen didn't run around, and the admiral didn't poke me. You always liked to poke me in the past. It's mine." Tirpitz shook her body, and she saw Saratoga squatting on the ground, and said again, "This dream has become so strange. Why is Saratoga here and about to attack? But it's already we haven't attacked in a long time, the admiral is not here anymore, why should we attack?" she said in a daze while crawling on the sofa, and then crawled until her head hit Sugu's shoulder. "What's wrong with Tirpitz?" Saratoga said as she looked at this scene. "Is she talking in her sleep after she has been talking for so long? What an amazing person." Leipzig raised her finger and said, "Shh, it's easy to get drowsy after sleeping for too long in the afternoon, but Bizai always looks like she hasn't woken up, and sometimes things like this happen suddenly. Although rarely." Sugu was sitting on the sofa. He saw Tirpitz crawling to his side, then stretching his body, and then reaching out to touch his face, ears, and hair. "It's so true. I met him and he actually looked like this, but he looked a little fatter. Of course he gained some weight because he was raised by Lexington. In the past, the closer you were, the farther away you were. But it's different today." Then she got under Sugu's arm. At this moment, confused by Tirpitz's movements, Sugu raised his arm. Then he immediately felt the other party pat his thigh and then slept on his lap. Then he moved his body as if trying to find a comfortable sleeping position. "I wanted to try it before, but never had the chance." Sugu looked at Tirpitz. Only Xiaozai had always made such an action, but Xiaozai was just a child, and the person sleeping on his lap was a lovely and beautiful adult. For Tirpitz, he was an admiral who had a good impression of 200 people, but for him, Tirpitz was just a stranger he met for the first time. In the past, when little Tirpitz slept on his lap, he would touch the other person's face and then do whatever he wanted to do. However, at this time, some people were helpless and raised their hands, not knowing what to do. Then Sugu saw Tirpitz burying his head between his legs, and then a sad voice came out. "Sister, Admiral, I really miss you a little." Upon hearing Tirpitz's words, Sugu, who originally wanted to wake him up, put down his hand, touched Tirpitz's long pink hair with his fingers, and then fell on Tirpitz's shoulders. Saratoga shouted doubtfully from the side, "Brother-in-law." Sugu felt the weight on his legs and the heavy feelings, and said, "Let her continue to sleep." Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 125. Tirpitz didn't seem to be unfamiliar at all. She pinched Sugu's face with her hands and rubbed it, just like what Sugu had done to Xiaozai countless times. At this time, Sugu's face was being pinched and rubbed. Shouldn't it be said that Heaven's reincarnation was unhappy? Then she patted Sugu's face with her palm. The feeling coming from her palm was different from usual. It must be real, not a dream. Thinking of this, Tirpitz turned Sugu's face towards him. In his eyes was the short hair that he was always accustomed to thinning and cutting, the familiar eyebrows, and the ones that seemed to have become rounder compared to before. Chin, everything is exactly the same as in my memory. Still having some doubts, she reached out and pinched her face again. She didn't let go until her cheeks were deformed. Her shoulders slumped, her messy hair jumped, and she let out a cry of pain. It's actually the real Admiral. Her voice still didn't seem surprised even now. Of course it's true, you've been saying this for so long, but you didn't realize it until now. Tirpitz seemed to have not heard what Sugu said at this time. She pinched Sugu's face with both hands and kneaded it like dough, and continued to say, "It's true." "Really, so stop pinching me." After finally waiting for Tirpitz to let go, Sugu said again, "But are you really awake?" "Of course I'm awake. It's already morning now." Sugu looked out the window. The sun was about to set now. The light in the evening was completely different from the light in the morning. It should be said that it was almost dusk. She had lived with Tirpitz for a long time in Leipzig, she explained, because for Bazai, night is morning, and her biological clock is different from normal people. Tirpitz said plausibly, "Leipzig, your biological clocks are different." After saying that, she looked at Sugu, as if she had finally found her toy. "I've finally found you, Admiral." Sugu thought to himself, "It should be said that I found you." Then she saw the lunch box placed on the table and said, "Did the Admiral buy it for me?" "No, that's from Leipzig." "Brother Leipzig." Leipzig had a dark look on his face and said indifferently, "Why don't you say little Nanny Leipzig?" Tirpitz opened his lunch box, took a big bite, and said, "How did the Admiral find this place?" "Thank you for the notebook." Then he told the whole story. "Gee, that's right. I'm so good at it. My sister said that drawing books are useless. It's not up to me." After finishing the lunch box 3 times, Tirpitz looked satisfied. She saw Sugu sitting next to her, and then complained, "I'm finally back. Everyone seemed to go crazy after you left. I just casually looked at the book and was scolded by the Prince of Wales. What's so great about her?" Tirpitz sat on the sofa, puffing up her cheeks and pouting, and the airflow blew her bangs away. She hadn't taken care of herself all day anyway, her clothes were wrinkled and even her hair was scattered. The image is gone. She used to be the flagship, and she looked amazing at that time. Now she doesn't do it as often as I do, and she still looks amazing. Hearing Tirpitz's complaints, Saratoga and Leipzig looked at me and I looked at you, completely incomprehensible. I thought to myself, when such a big thing as the Admiral's disappearance happened, you still had the heart to huddle in the dormitory and read your notebook. Who would you reprimand if the Prince of Wales didn't reprimand you? It has become very troublesome since you left. In the past, we would only attack when there was a big plan like Operation Valkyrie. I usually have nothing to do, and I can just lie in bed so comfortable every day, even if it doesn't matter if you get up at noon. But since you disappeared, Admiral, battleships like ours have been dispatched to look for you. I have to get up before dawn every day. I'm so tired. Even if I want to be lazy, otherwise, you will be caught as a typical example." Tirpitz complained like this, not shying away from things he wanted to be lazy about. "My sister is silent and cold every day. She didn't even scold me when I stole her bra. I didn't dare to talk to her at that time, but one day I suddenly met her and I was scared to death." Tirpitz said, and then the sky darkened little by little. Saratoga stood up from her seat and walked to the window to open the curtains. The sun set early in early winter, and it was already starting to get dark. "Brother-in-law, it's almost night, we have to go back." "That's right." As he said this, Sugu saw Tirpit's excited face and seemed to have nothing to do, so he stood up. Tirpitz originally looked excited, but suddenly froze when he saw Sugu standing up. She quickly reached out and grabbed Sugu's clothes. All the excitement disappeared. At this time, she acted like a child, and her voice was full of doubts. "Let's go? Why? Is the Admiral leaving again?" Sugu had already stood up, but Tirpitz stretched out half of his body from the sofa and grabbed his clothes, his expression a little confused. At this time, Tirpitz feels like an abandoned toy desperately trying to win back his owner, or like an aggrieved puppy abandoned by his owner. Tirpitz blinked. She didn't care about anything, even if she couldn't rest or read a book. "But there are only a few people that I can't let go of, such as my sister Bismarck, the Admiral, and little Tirpitz, the child version of myself." Sugu said, "Tirpitz, Leipzig, let's go together, to our side." Tirpitz opened his eyes wide and said, "Can't you stay? This is your home, too. My sister and I have been waiting for you here. Why don't you stay with Saratoga? It's okay to go together. Lexington is waiting over there." Tirpitz shook his head slowly and said, "If you don't want to go, can't you just stay here?" Tirpitz was silent for a moment and said, "When I was undergoing transformation, no, I should say it was when I was growing up. Anyway, I could call it anything. I had a dream. In that dream, the sky was gloomy. I dreamed of my sister. Sunk under numerous attacks, she was defeated by a fleet led by the Prince of Wales. When I woke up, I shed a lot of tears. I originally wanted to remember her, so I held the flowers, but my sister was actually still alive. Even though she was beaten up later, it was great. But no matter what, I still remember the scene in the dream. Clearly, I feel like I've grown since then. Later, Admiral, you left. I thought it was also a dream, but it wasn't. I never saw you again. When you proposed to me before, I thought it was troublesome and I just agreed. Sure enough, it still didn't work. No, I agreed casually, but I agreed seriously, super seriously. If the Admiral disappears, I don't know what I should do. I read a book, eat, sleep, and live a life of drunkenness and dreaming every day. Although it is also very good, I always feel that something is missing. So, Admiral, would you like to stay?" When Sugu heard Tirpitz's words, he couldn't help but feel sad in his heart. He was silent for a moment. He thought about it and said to Saratoga, who got up, "Otherwise, Chia, you should go back first and talk to your sister about dinner. If you don't go back to eat, you don't have to wait for me tonight." It was getting late, and Lexington had probably prepared dinner. The other party was always worried that he would never come back once he left. Usually, he could always go back at the specified time, but that probably wasn't possible today. So if someone needs to go back and notify Lexington at this time, then they can only ask Saratoga. At this time, Saratoga showed a surprised expression and said, "Ah, brother-in-law, are you going to stay up all night? My sister will kill me." "You like to arrange your sister, how can you do such a thing? And do you think I can walk away like this?" Saratoga saw Sugu's insistent expression and looked at Leipzig. Leipzig didn't care about any of this. She looked around with a look on her face. As for Tirpitz, although he had already seen through the opponent, he used to be a guy who clamored to go back to sleep even in the middle of a battle. But the way she looked at him at this moment, although there were no tears in her eyes, her expression was like that of an abandoned child, which made people helpless. Okay, but I'm just reporting the news, everything else is none of my business." "Well, fine, it's none of your business. As Saratoga left, Sugu looked at Tirpitz, whose eyes were red and swollen. He raised his hand, and then paused in the air for a long time. He would never make an overstep easily. At this moment, he thought about it and pinched Tirpitz's face and rubbed it. Okay, it's all over, I'll be here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 126. The sad expression on Tirpitz's face made it hard for him to leave, but there had to be an explanation from Lexington, and he couldn't lose sight of people for no reason, so he could only ask Saratoga to go back alone. Hearing that Sugu was going to stay, Tirpitz's mood immediately improved. For a time, people suspected that the original sadness was fake, but it was always a good thing that the girl was happy. At this time, we had dinner, talked for a while, and then everyone played landlord in the room. The main reason why it was in the room instead of in the living room was that Tirpitz wanted to lie down and play, so in the end Sugu and Leipzig could only sit by the bed, while Tirpitz was wrapped in a quilt alone. Like a caterpillar, and she still hasn't changed into her pajamas. My sister comes back occasionally and always sleeps with me. Prince Eugen and Leipzig sleep separately. Prince Eugen is my sister's little follower, bomb, and then a 3. Sugu and Tirpitz were a combination. He immediately pressed down a card and said, 2, then 3, and 1, Leipzig, you are the landlord, give me money. His poker skills were not bad, and so was Tirpitz. But at this time, Leipzig, who usually didn't like these activities, lost more. So what if you lose too much? Leipzig immediately threw away the cards. No, you still owe me salary. Sugu had a dark look on his face, while Tirpitz laughed beside him. Leipzig turned around and said, why are you laughing? You also owe me my salary, Bizai. If you want to get money from a money fan, you have to be prepared to be defaulted, but if you want to get money from a sinister boss, you have to be prepared to default. At this time, Tirpitz looked surprised and said, oh, I'm not gave you so many notebooks. It's a good thing she didn't say it. Leipzig became angry when she mentioned this matter. She said angrily, can the book be used as salary? I don't like the book, I want money, forget it, just treat it as part of your salary. Well, then Admiral, you win, shuffle the cards. You can get money by selling the book. I can't sell a few copies. Bizai, you draw the cards first. As Leipzig said this, the topic suddenly turned to the book. He was probably talking about the book's poor illustrations and lack of plot, so sales never increased. 1 against 7, Leipzig, you lost again. Well, I think the plot is quite good. Tirpitz lay on the bed and swayed his legs, without any female intuition. Is this okay? I don't know if it was intentional or not, but Leipzig wanted to argue with Tirpitz as soon as he threw the cards away. It's always a one-on-one plot, either Bismarck and Prince Eugen, or Bismarck and the Prince of Wales. Bismarck and Hood have the most plots, and that's all. But it's pretty good. Is this not bad? The plot is not coherent. It's just good. Tirpitz was rather stubborn. After arguing for a while, Sugu mentioned, the plot should be pretty good, right? Leipzig immediately became unhappy, but the couple seemed to be having some trouble. She said, it should be pretty good, right? You know plot. It would be wrong to question, Sugu said, I am the reader who has the most say, and of course I understand the plot. I am the best at making up stories. It would be better to talk about magic modification stories. This was probably the boast. He didn't know when the war would come to him. Leipzig insisted that he make up a plot. After hesitating for a moment, Sugu said, well, that, for example, the domineering president fell in love with me. How about a plot like this? Tirpitz looked at his admiral with curiosity. Although she was good at drawing notebooks, especially reading notebooks, she was not good at making up stories. Thinking of stories consumes brain cells, but she is particularly lazy. She can never stand when she can sit, and she can never sit when she can lie down. So, you want a plot? Please, please, that's so troublesome. Tirpitz blinked curiously and asked, what is that? Sugu was silent for a moment to organize his words, and then said, Hood is the daughter of a large company, but Bismarck is the ruthless president of a hostile company, and then an accident happened that brought the two together. The country hates the family, but the two love each other. But they couldn't be together. After all the hardships, they finally saw the light. But in an accident, Hood was injured in Bismarck's hands. Hood entered the ward. At this time, the Prince of Wales, a junior who had always admired Hood, decided to avenge his predecessor. She gathered a large group of companions such as Rodney and Royal Ark to ambush Bismarck, and then there was such a love-hate relationship. The plot of revenge happened. This is probably a historical plot that has been magically changed by him. Tirpitz's eyes widened as he listened to the story told by his admiral. Leipzig was a little hesitant. Of course, she had never seen such a routine article before, but she was not a person who liked spring and snow, so she felt that the story seemed acceptable. But she didn't want to give in. She said, what we draw is a book. The plot does not need to be so exaggerated. It also needs to be attractive. Of course the book needs to be this is the selling point. Leipzig was still finding fault, but Sugu became more and more enthusiastic. He said, the book is serialized, otherwise how to improve user stickiness. The first book is the story of the innocent young lady Hood and the cold President Bismarck. Of course, there are interspersed with misunderstandings, accidental revelations, and mistakes. The H-plot is of course indispensable. The classic version is interspersed with the holy light, and the collector's edition removes it. The second book can have various training plots, so Hood is injured during the training, then the Prince of Wales looked at his admired senior Hood sitting on the ground in ragged clothes, sobbing, and there was red on his body the whip marks. How could the senior she admired like such a plot of training? She caressed the shoulders of her senior Hood and thought it must be Bismarck who forced her to do so. She secretly vowed to take revenge. Sugu took a breath and stopped. Tirpitz quickly held his face beside him and urged, keep going, keep going. The innocent-looking Prince of Wales is actually a gangster. She gathered a group of people to head towards Bismarck, such as Rodney, or the Royal Ark. Of course, since it is the story of Bismarck and Hood, there must be a plot where Bismarck critically hits Hood. This cannot be changed. So the general plot is like this. Hearing this, Tirpitz's eyes shone brightly, and she arranged her favorite plot about her sister Bismarck. Leipzig didn't seem to find much fault, the plot was acceptable, and she and Tirpitz no longer quarreled at this time. Sugu looked at everyone's shocked expressions, smiled contemptuously at Leipzig, and said, let me tell you, I am very strong and I understand these things. At this time, Tirpitz quickly showed Sugu his previous works. As an author, it is always difficult to evaluate his own works accurately. At this time, he wanted to hear his admiral's opinion. Sugu took the book and flipped through it casually. However, his level of appreciation was average and he couldn't show his timidity after thinking about it. He pointed his fingers on the book and said, for example, if you want to rub your breasts, put your fingers on the breasts. It will sink in, but you don't have it here, it's just an appearance. Tirpitz kept nodding. There are no expressions or lack of expressions in your works. Like here, since it is a bondage, but the heroine's face only shows struggle. It should not only be struggling. The expression should be resentment mixed with pleasure or entanglement with her own degradation. Then here. As he was talking, Leipzig stood up from the bed and stretched. At this time, she winked at Sugu and teased, "Admiral, I didn't expect you to be so good at these things. It was all just pretending." Sure enough, he and Bazai are a good combination. Yet Tirpitz nodded. It would be best if the Admiral also liked the things he liked. What I really want to say is that Sugu himself didn't often read this book either in the past or now, but he had seen a lot of messy stuff on the forum, and now it was clear and logical. It was no problem to bluff a few girls. It is precisely because I scare people that I have some strange hobbies. Otherwise, how could I know so much? But we are serious people. At this time, he was teased by Leipzig. He thought of arranging Bismarck's plot, and suddenly he didn't pay attention to expose his evil side. He was strong and weak, and he was bound by training. It seems that my tall and majestic image has been completely ruined, so I blame you for making the atmosphere too normal. After talking for a while, Sugu tried his best to defend himself. Soon after, Leipzig gave him a slap and walked out of the room. "I won't continue talking to you. I got up early this morning and I really have no energy now." Leipzig then left, but Tirpitz was still in good spirits, and she was hearing the rise. But Sugu only had a little ink about these things in his stomach, so he reluctantly made a few suggestions. He himself felt that it was a bit perfunctory. However, Tirpitz listened attentively and occasionally interjected words like there's more, which made him a little ashamed. As the night gradually entered, even he began to be unable to hold on any longer. He stood up and said, "I'm ready to sleep too." Yet Tirpitz nodded. Although she was a homebody, she was still a very well-behaved girl, I guess. "Then I'll go sleep on the sofa in the living room outside. Give me the quilt." "Why are you going out?" "Just sleep here. I won't sleep at night anyway." It was a girl's room. Sleeping in the room like this would have a bad influence, so Sugu shook his head and said, "It's not good." "There's nothing wrong with it. I don't want to go to bed until morning, so you should take off your clothes and go to bed." "I don't take my clothes off to sleep, but it's very bright in here." "Then I'll turn on the light and sleep here." Sugu was not too pretentious. He had barely adapted to his identity, so he thought about it and fell on the bed. Of course, he wasn't as casual as when he was sleeping alone. He didn't take off his clothes or shoes at this time. He put his legs outside the bed and then pulled up half of the quilt to cover him. As he lay down and covered his eyes with his hands, Tirpitz turned off the light in the room, then turned on the small desk lamp, and the dim and warm light spread out. Tirpitz said, "Admiral, the pillow you are sleeping on now belongs to my sister." "Then I'll change it." "Why do you want to change? Don't you like your sister?" "How to say?" Sugu was lying on the bed and didn't know what to do. Forget it, he didn't want to worry about it. Sugu had fallen asleep at this time, and Tirpitz was sitting in front of the drawing board. She had not written for a long time, holding the pen thoughtfully. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 127. Sister. Sister, sister. In the evening, Tirpitz became more and more energetic. While reciting his sister's name, Tirpitz sat on the high bench behind the drawing board and swayed his legs. "I am happy to have found an admiral. In the future I will definitely be able to go back to sleeping during the day and being active at night without being scolded by my sister." At this time, she was holding a drawing board, holding a pencil in her fingers and absently sketching the water chestnuts on her sister's face. She had drawn too many portraits of her sister, and by now she had already reached the point where she was like a cook. But then she remembered her admiral's advice to have an expression. She rarely used an eraser to erase the originally drawn eyes, then drew a hook on the drawing board and added a few strokes to draw the eyelashes. Smiling Bismarck. Thinking of this, Tirpitz remembered that his sister had never shown such an expression. Her serious and old-fashioned military temperament made her smile like this when she received the admiral's ring. She drew 2 more circles and a hook on the drawing board. Although it was quite a joke, it turned into Quincy Bismarck again. After erasing more and more strokes, she painted a blush on Bismarck's face on the drawing board, followed by a shy Bismarck. But then she wiped it off, thinking it was totally featureless. After a moment's hesitation, she made a few random strokes, and now she was Bismarck, who had to succumb to violence under duress. He felt angry, but the pleasure coming from underneath him made him unable to control himself. So who is the perpetrator? Hood? Or the Prince of Wales? Thinking of this, Tirpitz' eyes suddenly lit up. She moved the drawing board in the direction of Sugu and immediately drew the outline of a human figure next to Bismarck. I had never been able to draw the Admiral's appearance properly before. It was only now when I saw the Admiral that I was able to connect his appearance with the picture in my memory. It was a very strange feeling. Although she recognized it, once she thought about many details, she couldn't remember them. At this time, she was here like a model, and she would not let it go. She moved the entire drawing board to the side of the bed, and drew the hairstyle with 1 stroke, and then reached the face. However, when the Admiral was sleeping, she covered her eyes with her arms, and half of her face was missing, and her eyes were also covered. If the eyes are not drawn and half of the face is missing, no one will recognize him as the Admiral. Forget it, let's skip this section for now and draw the shoulders and arms now. Sugu was originally lying on the bed, but he did not take off his clothes to sleep on it. Sleeping with his clothes on at this time would make Tirpitz, who was devoted to notebooks and painting, angry. However, Tirpitz had been drawing the notebook for so long, and she had already mastered it. She made a few strokes with her pen, and saw a naked man suddenly appear on the drawing board, except for a little bit of pain under her belly. Difficult to handle. Anyway, after finishing the basic drawing, she climbed onto the bed and tried to take away Sugu's hand, but she didn't dare to use too much force, so she had no choice but to give up. Then she crawled out of bed and suddenly thought of something. It was impossible to draw anything in a drawing book and just rely on imagination. It seemed that she had bought a camera before. But after using it for a while, I lost interest. After all, going out to capture scenes is a very troublesome thing. Later, I gave the camera to Leipzig, and the other party seemed to be very happy for a while. The camera is probably in Leipzig's room now. Tirpitz carefully stood on tiptoe, completely different from his usual way of shuffling in a pair of slippers. She carefully opened the door and walked to the living room. The living room was dark and only the outlines of cabinets, tables, and sofas could be seen. However, to a certain extent, she was a night owl. The surroundings were dark except for her bright eyes. She found the room in Leipzig without relying on her eyes but her feeling. Well, it was just because the room in Leipzig was side by side with hers. She carefully closed her door so as not to wake up her Admiral with the sound that followed. Subsequently, bang bang bang. Tirpitz knocked on the Leipzig door with his fists, but there was no response for a long time. Bang bang bang. She reached out and slapped the Leipzig door again. Leipzig, get up, get up. There was still no sound coming from Leipzig's room. He was probably sleeping very hard. Thinking of this, Tirpitz remembered that Leipzig always complained that he moved too much at night, as if he now wore earplugs when sleeping. Of course, it is also possible to violently tear down the door, but the sound may be very loud, so I thought about Tirpitz returning to the room, and then rummaging around in the room. Wardrobe. The wardrobe certainly doesn't have one. Then the drawer was next, and then she dug out a black lace bra and panties from the drawer. It belonged to my sister. When was it hidden by me? But why is the one next to it so small? It should belong to Prince Eugen, but it's hard to tell that she actually bought the same style of underwear as her sister, and it was hidden by herself unintentionally. Then she continued flipping. A broken music box. A record player disc that was broken in half. Well, it's a moldy loaf of French bread. If you want to eat it, forget it, and save it for Quincy later. Light bulb. My sister bought it, but in the end it was just the insurance that burned out, so I kept the light bulb. Bath stopper. Why is the plug placed here? Small glass ball. The sunny day doll made by Prince Eugene was a gift for his sister, but I remember that it rained many days after that. A lot of instructions and invoices for something. Flipping through it like this, Tirpitz found an iron box from the bottom of the drawer. It was left over from eating mooncakes in the past. It was brought back from afar by his sister. It was a condolence gift given to a garrison by someone else. Later, the admiral said I gave this box of mooncakes to my sister who is a mercenary. A box of mooncakes makes me want to catch a boat. It's so whimsical. Thinking of this, Tirpitz opened the iron box, which was filled with small coins and various cards, as well as a small bracelet with the word Sue engraved on it. In the other box was his own ring, and then she found a bunch of keys among the pile of things. The iron box was not closed, the drawer was not pushed into the cabinet, and there was a mess all over the place. Tirpitz walked out of the room barefoot and opened the door to Leipzig with the key. Then she climbed onto Leipzig's bed and then rode on it. After pushing, Leipzig did not wake up. Then she wanted to pinch Leipzig's nose with her fingers, thought about it, and gave up. She opened Leipzig's quilt and stretched out her hand from the collar of Leipzig's pajamas. Then, she was jumped and kicked under the bed by Leipzig who was sleeping. Fortunately, Tirpitz was already very careful, so she didn't make too much noise. The sound comes. Tirpitz looked at Leipzig sitting up on the bed and asked, "Why did you kick me?" Leipzig heard Tirpitz's voice, and originally thought who dared to do such a thing? That is, Tirpitz, this lawless guy. However, seeing that the villain Tirpitz complained first, she was still a little angry and said, "You came into my room, why?" Tirpitz immediately remembered the reason why she came to Leipzig's room, and she said, "Quick, Leipzig, give me your camera." Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 128. You actually want to take a picture of the Admiral. What are you thinking about? You are crazy. Leipzig held the camera and lowered his voice. To be honest, she was still very unhappy when she was woken up in the middle of the night, especially when she was woken up not to eat supper or drink beer but to be a photographer. At this time, she was wearing floral pajamas, grabbed her slightly messy blonde short hair, and reluctantly moved to Tirpitz's room. Hearing Leipzig's complaints, Tirpitz whispered, "I'm not crazy, I just asked you to take pictures." Saying this, she walked to the bed and squatted down, making a scissor hand next to Sugu. Click. Reluctantly, Leipzig took a photo. Tirpitz stood up again and looked down. Click. Another one. Then he took some pictures one after another, and Leipzig asked, "What did you do with the pictures after taking them?" "Keep it, you can take a look at it later." "Otherwise, what else can you do?" "Sell it for money." "All you can think about is money." "Otherwise, what else can you do?" Tirpitz looked at Leipzig with a matter-of-fact expression. "It's not just the money-obsessed person." "Otherwise." Leipzig held the camera in his hand and suddenly thought of something. Even the photos seemed to be able to be sold for money. Who will buy the photos in their hands? Unique photo of the Admiral sleeping. I think there were many people who liked the Admiral in the governor's mansion, but most of them were reserved. Even if there are people who dare to show off, if the destroyers are eliminated first, they will make a fuss and have no money in their hands. As for people like Washington and the Prince of Wales, they do not dare to go up to sell. After thinking about it for a long time, I finally settled on one person, the little fatty South Dakota. Thinking of this, Leipzig's hand holding the camera trembled slightly, and all the original reluctance disappeared. At this time, he only had one idea: take a few more pictures. Let's take a close-up of the face. It's a pity that it's not exciting enough. If the admiral were naked, it would be sold for a lot of money. When Tirpitz heard Leipzig's words, he said in confusion, "Bear. Otherwise, take off the admiral's belt." Leipzig said this, and Tirpitz on the other side reached for the quilt and tried to lift it without thinking too much. "What are you doing? You didn't mean to take off your belt." Leipzig stopped him quickly, pressed Tirpitz's palms with both hands, and said, "No, you really want to take off the admiral's belt. I was just talking casually. No matter who knows about doing such a thing, I'm going to be killed. It can't be solved anyway, at least not while I'm here. You really dare to do anything, idiot." "It's not the scene you said was more exciting." Tirpitz was not an idiot, he just felt that it didn't matter what he did. Even if it's a more exciting scene, you, a girl, can't do such a thing. Tirpitz responded. Although she had drawn many notebooks, she didn't know much about such things. After hearing Leipzig's words, she let go with some reluctance. The admiral couldn't take off his clothes. After thinking about it, Tirpitz began to unbutton his pajamas. "Bizai, why did you take off your clothes suddenly?" Before Leipzig could stop her, Tirpitz had already taken off her pajamas, revealing the black lace bra underneath, which was a set of underwear that originally belonged to her sister. "If we take a picture like this, won't it look like raw rice cooked into cooked rice?" It's not like Leipzig is seeking death. Even if she is not the mastermind, she is still an accomplice. She quickly shook her head and said, "No, it's not like it at all." "And why does your underwear look so familiar?" "Sister's underwear." Leipzig looked at the majestic size of Tirpitz's chest, subconsciously protected his chest with his hands, and said, "It's really too much." Although from the eyes of ordinary people, she is already at a normal level, but many things in the world are comparison comes out. The move of taking off her pajamas was stopped, and then Tirpitz wanted to kiss her. She didn't have much shyness as a girl, so she didn't think too much at this time to move Sugu's arm in front of her eyes. "Don't move the admiral's hand, he will wake up easily." Leipzig once again stopped Tirpitz from seeking death, and he still patted his chest with lingering fear and said, "Why should I do such a thing with you?" "Because we are a team." "Don't talk about the team. Is there anyone who owes wages to teammates like you?" Tirpitz whispered, "Let's talk about money again." "Is money so good?" "We are good sisters. Even good sisters have to talk about money. I want a salary and benefits." Leipzig suddenly showed an evil smile. She didn't know whether it was evil or because she wanted to see Tirpitz's bottom line. She said, "Why don't you sleep next to the admiral, and I will take some photos of you both." Tirpitz, who was careless, immediately lay down next to Sugu. "Just kiss the admiral's face from the side, and don't move the admiral's hand." Tirpitz leaned down and said, "Is this how you kiss?" Leipzig raised his camera. After a moment, Tirpitz asked, "Did you take the picture?" Leipzig almost cried, "Of course not." Instigating Tirpitz to do such a thing, if people knew that he was doing such things, he was only a light cruiser, so he might be beaten. There was no way that he could survive those fierce battleships. Then she took a few more photos one after another, and finally she became interested. She put the camera into Tirpitz's hand and repeatedly told her not to mess with the lens. Then she stood next to Sugu and raised her hand and said in attack action. "The bastard admiral who owes his salary should be beaten to death. The bastard admiral who owes his salary should go to hell." Just taking a few pictures, Leipzig quickly took back his camera. Although the camera was given to her by Tirpitz, it is now hers, and it belongs to her clearly. Then Leipzig played with her camera, especially the lens, which must not be scratched. She covered the lens with a cap and hung the camera around her neck. She looked at Tirpitz, who seemed to be unfinished, and said, "Yeah. It's almost time, I'm going back to bed." Tirpitz also said, "Then I'm going to sleep too." She didn't feel too sleepy, but the night was already fulfilling, and it was almost time to go to bed. Although she had slept for most of the day, she was the kind of person who would fall asleep whenever she wanted to. Leipzig looked around and noticed something just as she was about to leave. She said, "We took off the Admiral's shoes and lifted his feet to the bed." Tirpitz was a little confused and said, "Won't you wake up the Admiral? The photos have been taken. It doesn't matter if you wake up. If you don't tuck your feet into the quilt, it will be uncomfortable to fall asleep with your shoes outside. The quilt can't cover your feet properly if you leave them outside. You really don't understand anything." Tirpitz made no move. Leipzig glanced at Sugu, who was already sleeping, and Tirpitz, who was confused, and said helplessly, "I really owe you, I came here to be your nanny, anyway. Now you owe me a midnight snack." Soon after, Tirpitz watched Leipzig close the door, and then she turned off the lamp and slept curled up next to Sugu. Apart from being lazy outside the house, she is actually a slightly coquettish girl. She just feels that sleeping next to her Admiral is a very happy thing. As for what Saratoga did, she can't do it at all. Why do you suddenly want to take pictures? It is difficult to reunite a broken mirror, and I am always worried that the Admiral will leave again, so now even if he leaves, I finally have something to miss. She scratched her nose with her fingers in the darkness and nestled her head on Sugu's shoulder. "The Admiral is back, and my sister will be back soon, and we can all be together again. The dream I had while remodeling, the sadness of losing my sister, the sadness of losing the Admiral suddenly on a sudden day, everything will end." In the darkness, she turned her head and glanced at the window again. The thick curtains were drawn so well that she couldn't see the stars at all, and the small flowers dotted on the curtains turned into hazy spots. She turned her head again and pressed her forehead against Sugu's shoulder, thinking, "Go to sleep, tomorrow will be better." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De-rong Yan. Chapter 129. Sugu originally slept on the edge of the bed. When he got up in the morning, he almost fell under the bed. Only when he sat up on the bed did he remember that he was sleeping in Tirpitz's room. He looked down at his clothes and saw that they were still well dressed. Of course, he was not worried about what he would do to him, because it was always women who suffered the consequences of those things. The clothes and trousers are well worn, but the shoes appear to have been removed. I remember that I didn't have slippers when I went to bed at night. I thought that Tirpitz might have helped me take off my shoes, and I thought that although he was a homebody, he also had a caring side. He sat on the bed and looked around. Tirpitz was sleeping next to him. His long pink hair was messy and his sleeping face was unexpectedly cute. But even though the girl is very cute, Sugu, who prides himself on being upright, doesn't do anything. However, he usually sleeps with the child version of Tirpitz. The two have similar looks, which gives people a weird feeling at this time. If the small house were here, it would probably give people the feeling of a family of three. Tirpitz was still sleeping soundly, and he didn't know when the other party would go to bed at night, but he was not prepared to wake him up. He stretched his feet out from the quilt and tried to put on his shoes. The laces of his shoes were untied. He usually never untied his shoelaces when sleeping. This also confirmed that someone took off his shoes for him. Walking from the room to the living room, the curtains in the living room have been opened, and the morning light comes in. The originally messy living room has been simply tidied up, giving people a particularly refreshing feeling at this time compared to yesterday. Then he walked to the bathroom and saw Leipzig changing into a goose yellow hoodie. At this time, she was arranging her short blonde hair in front of the bathroom mirror. Sugu said hello, good morning. Then he noticed the other person's expression and asked doubtfully, but you don't seem to be in good spirits. Leipzig rubbed the dark circles under his eyes and suddenly thought of those photos. He remembered that he had been excited for half the night, and at this time the real owner appeared here, feeling a little guilty. But the shame only lasted for a few seconds. You must know that it was the bastard admiral who owed his salary, so it was better to collect some salary in advance. The more timid you show, the easier it is to be exposed. Leipzig said angrily, I want you to take care of it. Let's not talk about the past games. There was no option to pay salary at all. Of course, even if there was an option, if there was no benefit, it would not be paid. Just like in the past, no matter how great the merits of anyone, the ring was only given to a few big ships. But now that he has inherited everything from the past, he will certainly have to pay his salary if necessary. Of course, he will not say anything like why should I pay back the salary I owe based on my ability, but now he is really poor. Sugu asked again, how did you add the freckles on your face that day? During the comic exhibition, Leipzig painted light freckles on his face. Even though he was still pretty, his overall score was still reduced by a few points. Wear makeup, otherwise it's easy to get into trouble with people who strike up a conversation. Makeup? Did you learn makeup? We can't just talk about makeup, it's quite a bit of a disguise, so you need to learn it separately. Do you still need to learn these things? As a girl, you will know it. It's not enough to pretend to be wearing makeup. At this moment, he looked at Leipzig combing his short blonde hair with a comb soaked in water, and asked, what time did you get up? You must have tidied up the living room. Yeah, 6 o'clock. It's early winter and I'm afraid it's still dark, so it's a bit unexpected so early. You guys can go over to our place today. It's always yours and ours, do you think of yourself as a guest? At this time, Sugu was questioned by Leipzig like this, and he thought that he was really polite. There was really no way that he could immediately replace himself as the closest person to the other party. Then Leipzig pointed to the things placed next to him and said, your toothbrush, cup, and towel are all there, new ones. Sugu picked up the toothpaste and brushed his teeth. He looked at the slight bags and dark circles on Leipzig's face and asked, seriously, Leipzig, why is your spirit worse than Bazai's? Leipzig immediately thought of himself holding the camera and being excited all night, and repeated, I want you to take care of it. Sugu raised his hands in surrender, okay, women always have unreasonable privileges. On the other side, seeing his admiral finish brushing his teeth, Leipzig asked, do you want hot water to wash your face? No need, I can't tell, Leipzig, you are so careful. There used to be 100 or 200 sisters in the town hall. How many of them do you remember? Otherwise, what kind of person do you think I am? Sugu thought for a while, Leipzig, as a light cruiser, has no outstanding capabilities at all. It was already at an advanced stage when it was built. Come to think of it, there are not many light cruisers that can fight. However, because of the good appearance, it was immediately picked up. I was thrown into the expeditionary brigade, and I still can't remember all the lines for Leipzig. Miser. Cai me is a big-headed man. You obviously don't pay me salary, but now you blame me for being a money man. Okay, my fault surrendering again, Sugu said, but seriously, go to my place today. Leipzig raised his chin slightly and said, is this your attitude of asking for help? Sugu lowered his head slightly and said, Master Leipzig, please come to my humble residence. If he were wearing a suit and tuxedo, he would probably look like a butler or a deacon, but whether it was standard or not depends entirely on his imagination. That's not a problem. I just want to say that the first thing you have to do is wake up your lazy woman. Lazy woman, doubtful, Sugu thought of Tirpitz in the next second. He was the only one who deserved to be called lazy woman. Then she added, "But are you really so anxious to go back? We made an agreement yesterday, and we have to discuss things when we go back today." "What's the matter?" "It's time to prepare to own my own townhouse. To tell you the truth, I am living on soft food now. When I own the townhouse, I will have a salary. There will also be many shipping companies and logistics companies. Companies like this give me gifts, and it's my turn. When I get rich, why don't I just do whatever I want?" "You still owe me a salary." Leipzig glanced at Sugu cutely and said, "You still owe a lot of people a salary. Can we not talk about salary?" At this time, Leipzig has arranged her hair to be neat and tidy, and it has returned to the neat appearance from when we first met. It must be said that her too neat and cunning temperament makes her look like a villain. "If you don't want to talk, let's talk. But you don't mean to find everyone. Even if there is a town hall, you will have to travel around the world. I'm afraid you won't be able to enjoy the town hall. Run away and just browse the scenery. Eating in the open air and sleeping in the open air is still considered sightseeing? If you don't have the right diet and are not acclimated to the local environment, it can also be considered sightseeing. Can you pick up some good ones? Okay, Bismarck will come back every once in a while. She probably won't do anything to you, but maybe. Bismarck should be fine. She's okay, but what about the Prince of Wales? What about Helena? And the Colorado, she was the first battleship to accompany you. And the Hornet, I know everything about the carrier-based aircraft B-25. Wait. You have a lot of things to deal with, or do you think everyone is as easy to deal with as us, and as easy to talk to as Tirpitz? That's a bit difficult to handle, but I don't want this to happen. What can I do?" After talking for a while, Leipzig had taken care of herself and turned into a slender and beautiful girl again. The only thing missing was probably her breasts. Then she ran to Tirpitz's room, lifted his quilt, and shouted, "Bizai, get up." Sugu had already washed his face and adjusted his image in front of the mirror. I thought to myself that Tirpitz had been found, and the matter about the townhouse was finally on the agenda. I didn't know what the encounter between Xiaozai and Bizai would be like. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 130. Sugu took Tirpitz and Leipzig back to his residence and took the Chuangziu tram. It was easy for Leipzig to call everyone out, but the difficult thing was Tirpitz, who hated going out. Although Tirpitz no longer objected to going to Sugu's residence together after a day, he still hated going out. For this reason, Sugu promised the other party many promises. Of course, whether he will promise them afterwards is another matter. Excessive requests would definitely be rejected, but with Tirpitz's temperament, he probably wouldn't make excessive requests. I have to say that cute and beautiful girls always attract attention and attract a lot of attention along the way. However, Chuangziu, as a city that developed because of Kanyang, did not have entangled local forces, and the military police, who hardly accepted bribes or compromises, were the most difficult people to deal with. The whole city was still very harmonious. There are many kangaroo girls in the city, and most of them are cute and beautiful, and because they can easily see through people's hearts and have some strong power, beautiful women to a certain extent make people with evil intentions feel taboo. Every city has dark places, but when it comes to darkness, Sichuan has very few. Nowadays, it is popular in the underworld to open casinos and nightclubs, and there are many ways to make money. On the contrary, it is the little hooligans who roam the streets. It was a smooth journey today, and I didn't meet anyone who looked at me. Because he was there was no one to strike up a conversation with. It's just that having to drag Tirpitz with him, who is obviously listless, along the way is difficult. There are too many strange glances thrown at him along the way. After returning to the residence, there was a welcome. It was a joy for everyone to find two sisters again. Although Tirpitz was a homebody, she had unparalleled fighting ability, while Leipzig was a master of expeditions. The expedition master, who insists on expeditions every day, is everyone's favorite person. Of course, Tianlong and Long Tian are the most popular among them as the leaders. Then we talked about Bismarck. Bismarck would come back every once in a while, but now he was probably running around the world. Judging from the available information, Bismarck and Prince Eugen, the Prince of Wales' newly built garrison, Exeter's name York, and Akaga's Kaga. Among the temporary information, only Bismarck and Prince Eugen's are the most reliable. The place we live in now is already very small, and there is nothing we can do if people come again. No matter what, building a garrison is the first priority. Soon after, I started to talk about the affairs of the town government, some things that need to be paid attention to, or some reference opinions. Sugu first expressed his opinion. He said, "I also want to build a new townhouse, but it will take a lot of time to build a new one. To be honest, I want everyone to enter the townhouse before the year, even if it is an old one. The tutelage is fine. Wouldn't it be nice to celebrate the new year in your own tutelage?" Saratoga said, "New Year? It's not long ago. I'm used to New Year's Eve, but it actually takes quite a while. I'll discuss it with Akagi at the town hall, so I also want to hear your thoughts. For example, what do you want? Like fireflies and small houses, what do you want? Do you want a playground? Like a rocking tiger, slide, seesaw, etc." Then he continued, "I can draw drawings. It is not difficult to renovate an old townhouse. As long as the big aspects of construction are done well, it will be easy to handle. I can also do the details, such as rectifying wires and lines. And there aren't many people now, and it's not a big project. We can just do some simple decorations ourselves. Each person has a room. For now, a large dormitory building is fine. But in the future, there will be more and more people. It will require at least multiple buildings. However, a destroyer can have several people in one dormitory. Think about it and at least have a dormitory. The town hall is as big as my junior high school." The junior high school he remembered was originally the high school affiliated with the normal university, and the 3 grades in total were just 10 classes. He has a lot of affection for the former junior high school. Thinking about the townhouse as big as the junior high school, it feels almost the same. What he liked most was the greenery of the junior high school. We also need a basketball court and a football field. It's too troublesome to take care of the turf. He talked about all kinds of messy things, like a hammer here and a stick here and there, and finally asked, "What do you think?" There should also be supporting facilities, such as a power distribution room, a water tower, a garbage station. The garbage station needs to be built outside the town hall. I can think of these for now. What about you? What buildings, houses, and facilities do you want? Table tennis table. Swimming pool. Sugu thought for a moment and said, "The town government must be on the beach. Why do we need a swimming pool? And it will be very troublesome to clean up by then. Let's reject it." Central air conditioning. There is still no solution for central air conditioning. In fact, floor heating is just a matter of consideration. It is troublesome to install and requires a boiler. Well, it is not impossible to consider. By the way, in addition to the destroyer's classroom, we also need a large auditorium, which can be used for meetings, but it can also be replaced by a classroom. We also need to build a playground and an activity room, such as Akaga's Kyoto activity room. Place. York City suddenly said, "I want to build a bathtub in my room." Taking a bath is so comfortable. She still remembered taking a bath in Chennan's town hall during her internship. Sugu was silent for a moment and said, "It's too troublesome. If you do that, you have to connect water pipes and drain water in your room, which will make the room wet." As he said this, the idea of York City reminded him, and he said to Lexington, I am going to install a cloakroom and bathroom in my room. The bathtub and shower must be ready, just like a single room. Do you want a room like this? Where's Gaga? I also want. So be it. York City waited for a long time, and no one asked her. She said, you haven't asked me yet. Didn't I reject your proposal? You are not allowed to build a bathtub in the room. You are partial. At this time, everyone was talking, and suddenly there was a sniffling sound from the other side. They turned their heads and looked. It seemed that Bazai had made Xiaozai cry. Originally, Bazai had been sleeping on the sofa very unconsciously, and it had been like that since the morning. The sofa here in Sugu is very short, and Tirpitz is curling up her legs. In terms of height, she is taller than Saratoga, who also likes to lie on the sofa. When she first came here, she slept on Sugu's lap. Xiaozai didn't say anything when he saw her. Later, when Lexington sat next to the sofa, Bazai slept on Lexington's lap as usual. They had fought together many times and had a good relationship. So no matter whether it was Bazai or Xiaozai, Lexington regarded them as younger sisters. At this time, Xiaozai looked and wanted to speak, but held back. To say that Saratoga doesn't feel anything about these things, it's good that Bazai has a soft personality, and we are all good friends. At this time, Xiaozai was the only one who looked at Bazai's performance and her lips became flat. Whether it was the Admiral, Sister Lexington, or the former Sister Bismarck, she didn't know why she suddenly felt that there were many things that originally belonged to her. All were robbed. But to say that Bazai made Xiaozai cry, the reasons for making him cry were actually not these. Of course, it's not because Bazai hugged Xiaozai and rubbed her like a toy regardless of resistance, and he didn't care about Xiaozai's resistance at all. The reason why I cried seemed to be because the two of them were talking, and for some reason Xiaozai said, "Damn otaku girl." Bazai, who was lying on the sofa and holding the book he had brought, said nonchalantly, "If you are a otaku, you will be an otaku. Anyway, you will become like me when you grow up." Xiaozai shouted angrily again, "Lazy. When you grow up, you become me." Xiaozai said seriously, "I only know how to read a book, but I am incompetent. You'll become me anyway." Hearing this, Xiaozai immediately shouted, "Can you stop talking about growing up?" Bazai showed an innocent expression and said, "Why don't you tell me, it's true, you will become me." Xiaozai had a grimace on his face, but now he cried, "Wow, oh, wow, I don't want to be you."